A call for IRS official Lois Lerner to be arrested. New developments in the IRS scandal. It's just minutes away right here on the record. And this is a Fox News alert. More and more immigrant children are streaming across our border without their parents. The U.S. desperately trying to figure out where to put thousands and thousands of these young children. And tonight, we're going to talk to an Arizona sheriff trying to take care of the children while also battling drug cartels. Plus, this will stun President Obama. Now, Reverend Jesse Jackson is slamming him over his handling of the crisis. Reverend Jackson is here, and Donald Trump goes on the record about the border crisis. But first, we're taking you live to the El Paso, Texas border, where hundreds of immigrants just arrived. KFOX reporter Bill Malugin is live with the latest. Bill.
Yeah, Greta, we do have some recent numbers for you. We know that as of yesterday, a plane full of 140 illegal immigrants did fly into El Paso. And again today, another plane full of, again, 140 illegal immigrants did arrive again today. Now, one of the local relief shelters out here called the Annunciation House, it's a nonprofit, they've been housing some of these immigrants. They confirmed yesterday, just within the last month, they've given shelter to 2,000 illegal immigrants. Again, that's just within the last month. They're telling us most of these people are families from El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala, and that they're really only staying 2 to 3 nights. They're asking for a change of clothes, being able to take a shower before they leave El Paso. They confirmed that every single one of those families have left El Paso, gone elsewhere in the United States, most likely to reunite with their families. We've reported some of the local hospitals out here, they have been treating some of these immigrants as they're shipped here by the Border Patrol, treating them for minor diseases, things like scabies, lice, and even a couple of cases of confirmed tuberculosis. The local processing centers out here in El Paso absolutely filled to capacity. That's one of the reasons why ICE has to build new processing centers. And we got a chance to tour one of those this morning. We got up early and made a 4-hour drive out to Artesia, New Mexico, where ICE just opened on June 27th a brand new detention facility. Now, it's not housing any unaccompanied children or adults. It's strictly only for family units. And what that means, a family unit is a mother and a child, or a child and one of their legal guardians. Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson was there explaining what the facility is for. He says it has a capacity of 700, but right now there are 400 people there, which includes 191 families. Now, ICE did give the media a very quick 5-minute tour. There were about 15 to 20 local TV stations, and they gave us a very quick tour, very strict. They didn't let us take any audio, really. They showed us some of the cots, the beds, the rooms that these immigrants are being housed in. They get TVs. They showed us one of the children's rooms. They get Xboxes. They get TVs as well. And really, these things look more like summer camps than actual detention areas.
Bill, let me ask you about the 2 to 3 nights that they're spent at this Annunciation House, where they've had 2,000 illegals in the last month, and then they leave. Is there any idea where they're going? Are they just scattering? Any record of them? Where are they going?
Well, according to Ruben Garcia, he's the director of the Annunciation House, what he was telling the media during his press conference yesterday is that they're really just spreading all across the United States, trying to reunite with their family. I've spoken with a chief Border Patrol sector. He was a former Tucson sector Border Patrol chief for 20 years. What he explained to me is that once these immigrants get into the United States, once they get their court date with an immigration judge and they have their papers, they're able to travel anywhere in the United States they want to. He told me that if they were to be driving down Interstate 10 in, Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, and get stopped at a Border Patrol checkpoint, all they have to do is show them their court papers, and they have to let them right on through.
Bill, thank you.
Thanks for
and an Arizona sheriff says his county is ground zero for the cartel crisis, and now he's trying to fight off the cartels while also trying to deal with an influx of immigrant children. Sheriff Paul Vadmu joins us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Greta.
All right, it's nice to see you again. Now, your county is not on the border, so what is the impact you're feeling from this new crisis on the border?
Well, not that we have enough problems with the illegal immigrants. 123,000 were apprehended just over a year ago. We've just arrested cartel scouts. This is the #1 pass-through county for drug and human smuggling. But President Obama is now flying in some of these unaccompanied juveniles to Arizona, and they're planning to put 50 of them right in my county. And I've got a problem with that. We've got enough issues here, and we don't need more problems flown in, compliments of the president.
All right, 50, I mean, look, you don't need 50 more problems. You don't even need one more problem. But there's no reason, I mean, how do you know these 50 are going to be a problem? I know that the concern is that they're going to be part of some gang or something, but frankly, in this day and age, you might be able to go to a public high school and have just as many problems, you know, with kids who might turn out to be, you know, a problem. So why these 50?
Sure. Well, here's the concern. El Salvador, MS-13, one of the most violent gangs in the Western Hemisphere, we already have confirmation that many of these have infiltrated into these nearly 60,000 unaccompanied juveniles. It's very clear that a lot of these individuals have been coached coming in, as their very hope as they come to the border was realized when they were welcomed with open arms. And what to say is, hey, we're fleeing, we're refugees, and we want asylum. And now the president's putting forward a proposal for $3.7 billion to give them what they want, and no enforcement, not turning them back, but to just accept them. And all that does is reinforce a bad message to the millions of future illegals in Mexico and Central America that make it to the border and you're home free. There's no more law. There's no more consequences for breaking the law if you're from a foreign country.
All right, out of that $3.7 billion, do you have any at all? We only have 30 seconds left. It's sort of earmarked to sort of help you with your problem or not. Do you have any clue about that?
Yeah. Solve the core problem, secure the border. The president might as well throw this $3.7 billion out the window because it's going to repeat itself. 60,000 will pale in comparison to what we're about to see because of what he has just done.
Sheriff, thank you. Always nice to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Greta.
And President Obama getting slammed by Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jackson accusing the president of putting illegal immigrant children before our own American children. Reverend Jackson saying the billions of dollars President Obama wants for the immigrants would be better spent combating violence in U.S. cities like Chicago. And he's not the only one.
Now billions of dollars want to be borrowed from the White House to help feed and house them. What about the goddamn kids here, in our neighborhood, in our country?
And Reverend Jesse Jackson joins us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, Greta. Let me say quickly, I think getting support to those children in the humanitarian crisis is the morally right thing to do. The women and the resources are very important. I think even Glenn Beck sending food and water and clothing is the right thing. But there's also a crisis in Chicago. It's not either, it's both and. We cannot turn our backs on those children there. Not here in Inglewood, where 1,000 have been shot this year, 200 killed, several thousand in the last few years. To me, we need a comprehensive plan here at home as well.
All right, two questions on that. One is the obvious problem is that whatever amount of money, it's finite, that we have to fix any of these problems. I mean, we always have to make very ugly decisions. You know, what do we do with the limited amount of resources we don't have or we have to borrow? That's the first question I have, is how would you divvy that up? The second question is, has President Obama been to these areas in Chicago where these problems are happening so that he's got his attention on it?
Well, it's the area where he was the organizer in, but let me say we have a crisis here of guns being trafficked in, and drugs being trafficked in, and the police are overwhelmed. We need the FBI to stop the federal violation of the drugs in, guns in, and then, of course, his jobs out. Here we have a crisis, Greta, with even more children, where 50 schools have been closed, 50 drugstores closed, 72 grocery stores have been closed without a trauma unit. Several thousand have been killed in the last few years. So we have a crisis at home, and maybe it mirrors much of what's happening in rather abandoned urban America. I don't think it's time to slam anybody. We could not turn our back on the children on the border, not the children in Inglewood and Lawndale and Roseland and Austin as well.
All right, but okay, it's a crisis on the border. Everyone's talking about it, and you know, there's no question it's making headlines and every news show and stuff. The crisis in urban America, most directly the crisis in Chicago. Exactly what has this administration done to say that it acknowledges the crisis exists, and the president has any attention on whether it be Chicago, Detroit, or any other city?
Well, I can tell you this: in Chicago, on the south and west side of Chicago, unemployment is 3 times the national average. We vacated 80,000 abandoned and vacant homes because the banks ripped us off. The banks started to bail out. The people got left
Reverend, out. You and I are on the same page as I know it's terrible in Chicago. I know it's terrible in Detroit. What I'm trying to figure out is, while all the attention by this administration is currently on this crisis in on our border, and I think it is a crisis and one we should be paying attention to. Has the other crisis been neglected? The urban crisis been neglected by President Obama, and specifically Chicago, which is his home city?
I think he left a lot of it to the mayor, but it's bigger than that. And I think it's time for a White House conference on urban policy. HUD should be here because of the housing. When you close public housing and foreclose private housing, you have 20,000 homeless children in our school system here in Chicago. The issue of health and human services. That many people killed, you have a level of trauma and fear here. So you convene HUD and HHS and labor and let Chicago be a model for reconstruction. And right now we need such a...
But you say right now we need this. This has been going on for years. Why hasn't the president done something about this? I mean, it makes me crazy how much waste there is in this town of Washington. Well, there's a real need in a lot of these cities like Chicago. But what exactly has this administration done to try to help your problem? It's not just show up yesterday or today. It's been going on.
Well, while there is a crisis, on the other hand, there are more people working now than were working 7 years ago, 6 years ago. There are more people who have health care now than had it then, but it's not enough. Because this is not a crisis, this is a pattern. Last 10 years, about 4,000 have been killed, 1,000 injured by gunshot. We don't make guns in Chicago. Guns are made in Barrington and downstate Illinois, so guns in, drugs in, and jobs out. 90,000 lost to the NAFTA zone. And because it is so much bigger than the mayor's domain or even what the governor can do, I contend we need some federal intervention. And that this is time for emergency investment in jobs now in this city for these children. We need more coaches and more teachers, not more police necessarily.
Well, you're a lot nicer about it than I am, because I'm absolutely outraged that this administration has absolutely ignored the inner cities, and we've seen a great city like Detroit, and I realize they've got responsibility. Detroit's, sunk their own ship, and I realize Chicago too. But there have been so many backs turned on so many of these urban areas, and it's just a tragedy. But I'm taking the last word on that. Reverend, always nice to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Now to Donald Trump. He's also not happy with President Obama's handling or lack of handling on the immigration crisis. Here's what Donald Trump told us. Donald, nice to see you, sir.
Hi, Greta.
Listen, I want to ask you about some things about President Obama's request. $3.7 billion for the border. What do you think about that?
Well, I think the whole thing is ridiculous. It's like an open sieve. People are just pouring in, all sorts of people that are sick and with contagious diseases like tuberculosis, which is a real disaster. And what we are doing with this country is unthinkable. So they're going there, and it's a big humanitarian problem. There's no question about it. But they're all being dropped there because we're an open fence. We're an open door. We should just automatically say we have an open door policy, because what's going on is absolutely insane for this country. And we owe, as you know, $17 trillion, Greta. $17 trillion. We can't afford this. And they're only there because of the fact that we're saying, welcome, come in, and it's not a good situation.
How do you describe President Obama's immigration policy? What do you think it is?
Well, it's grossly incompetent. You could make the case that maybe there's some intelligence behind it, because as the people come in, as they acclimate over the years, they become citizens, because he's probably going to make them all citizens, and they're going to vote Democratic. So maybe there's method behind the madness, but it is a total disaster. And it's a real problem for this country. Our country is going down with what we're doing. Our country is going down.
Well, apparently since October of last year, there have been 52,000, that's the number we're hearing, of unaccompanied minors who have poured into the United States over this border. I mean, do you have any thought about what provoked this? Because these numbers are hugely bigger than they have been in past years.
Well, I think the number is much bigger than that. Those are the numbers that are reported. So I think the numbers, and what provokes it is very simple. Go to the United States and we'll give you Obamacare, okay? Go to the United States and they'll take care of you. But we have people that are coming in that should not be here. We have criminals that are coming in all over the place. You know, many of the people that are coming in are criminals with terrible records, and now the country is sending them over. And we should do something with Mexico, because they're coming in through Mexico, and Mexico's taking our money left and right. They're getting rich because of us with our stupid policies, where our companies are opening up factories in Mexico. We're doing it, and yet nobody can speak speak to Mexico about stopping it. This is an outrage.
All right, President Obama's resisting going down to the border. Do you agree with him? I suppose he suspects that we'll get accused of just doing a photo op, or is he avoiding sort of seeing what's going on, or is there some other reason he just won't go down and take a look? Because I always think going to the place gives you a much stronger idea of what's going on.
Well, I think he probably sees what's going on. He probably knows what's going on, I assume. I hope he at least knows what's going on. There's a question about even that. But the fact is that it's not a very good photo op for him because it's bedlam. It's total bedlam. I mean, I think it's a total disaster from his standpoint, and even politically, although he's got no more elections, so he doesn't have to worry about that in the true sense. But I think it's really a disaster somewhat for the Democrats. I think the Republicans come November are probably going to have a very, very big victory.
Do the Republicans share any blame in this current crisis, or is this a lack of leadership at the top and an unwillingness to work with Republicans?
Well, I think really everything starts from the top. They're talking about immigration policies, but I mean, our basic policy is we have an open door policy. Everyone's flowing into the country. There's no checks. There's no balances. Sort of interesting. If you come from Asia, if you come from Europe, you cannot get into this country. You just can't do it. And if you come from wherever they're coming from, they're just pouring in. So it's a very serious problem for the United States.
Does this tempt you to throw your hat in the ring for 2016? You know I always ask you that.
Well, you do, and we'll see what happens. Everyone asks me the same question because they see such gross incompetence at the top, and they're always asking me that question. We're going to see what happens in November, and then after that, we'll make a decision.
And we asked Donald Trump another burning question, one I know you want to know. In light of his Rosie rivalry, what does he think of Rosie O'Donnell's return to The View? You have to hear Donald Trump's answer to that question coming up. But first,